This is our setup for tonight. We stopped at a rest stop about 3 or 4 hours from DC. Didn't have much driving left in us, so just hanging out at the rest stop, chilling with the puppies.
And then we got Trent. I think he's working on some seals. Are you just cutting it so you can take it off? Just scrape it?
Yeah, do the best I can without hurting the paint too much.
So what is that you're putting on? Is that silicone?
I don't know. It's like roof. This is like for the roof, but
Works.
it's clear and it works everywhere.
Why do you take an alcohol wipe to it?
Gives a clean service for the ceiling.
We made it to Maryland. Say hi, babe.
Hello. We're in Maryland.
We are in D.C.
No, we're not.
Here we are.
We're outside of DC.
Whatever, close enough.
We're about 15 minutes north of DC.
Yeah, I'll show you on the map. So here's DC, and we're staying like up here. Welcome to Cherry Hill Park, a monumental experience. Ooh, and this is the United States Navy Memorial.
Deserve to have access to healthcare. We, the employees of UNC, provide that healthcare.
So most cities exist before they put the capital there, right? There was a London before there was, a British government. There was a Madrid before there was a Spanish government. But the United States built Washington D.C. specifically to be a capital city. It's the oldest planned capital city in the world. So Washington D.C. is unique in that regard. The first two capitals of the United States under the new Constitution were New York City and then in Philadelphia, right? The White House is one of the most famous buildings in the United States. From 1792 until 1800, nobody lives there. 1800, the second president of the United States is the first president to move into the White House. Does anybody know who the second president of the United States is? John Adams. John Adams. This is the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall. You look at this memorial and you get a completely different feeling than when you were over at the World War II Memorial, right? Because the World War II Memorial recognizes a war that the United States won. We did not win the Vietnam War, right? We lost the Vietnam War for a number of reasons. It went on a very long time. Americans started dying in Vietnam in 1959. That's when the first American troops went in. And then our involvement really increased in the 1960s. And then we didn't stop losing troops until 1975. That's when we pulled the troops out. So that's 16 years that the war went on for. And we fought the war in kind of a restrained way because we were at war with the North Vietnamese who were attempting to invade and take over South Vietnam, but we never actually invaded North Vietnam because we were afraid what that would mean. We didn't want to deepen our involvement to that level. And so we didn't go into North Vietnam. We relied on an air campaign in order to defeat the North Vietnamese at home, and that didn't work. And then also the war was a very controversial war back home for its length, also for the amount of money that was spent. There was a draft during the war, and there are drafts in lots of wars, but the draft implemented during this war was one of the most controversial drafts in American history. Because if you were a college student, you were exempt from the draft, and if you did not go to college, you had to go. So a lot of people felt that was unfair. They thought it was a rich man's war, but a poor man's fight. And then also, during the course of the war, the American people got the sense that government was not being honest with them about how the war was progressing. Government told the American people for years that the war was going to be won and that the North Vietnamese and their allies in the South, the Viet Cong, were going to be defeated any day, and then it never happened. So what happens during the Korean War is that in 1950, North Korea attacks South Korea, and they're led by Kim Il-sung. Kim Il-sung is the grandfather of Kim Jong-un, right? So the Kims, the Kim dynasty, has been running North Korea for 3 generations. So what we do in response to North Korea's invasion is we send in our troops, along with other United Nations allies, to liberate South Korea. And then we keep pushing the North Koreans back. We push them back all the way to the Yalu River. And the Yalu River is the border between China and North Korea. And the Chinese, like the North Koreans, are communist. And they don't want North Korea to fall. So what they do is they launch this massive counterattack against the United States. And so it's a 3.5-year war. It's very bloody. Around 500,000 South Koreans are killed, maybe 500,000 North Koreans, and maybe more than 1 million Chinese. And 34,000 Americans die during the conflict as well. So it's a very destructive conflict. But the upshot of it is that at the end of the war, the 38th parallel is reestablished. That's the line that separates North Korea from South Korea. And South Korea is kept free of North Korean control. And if it weren't for what the United States did during the Korean War, all of the Korean peninsula would be run by Kim Jong-un.
I will be at Normandy next week for the 75th
Yeah, I was
anniversary.
going to say 75th anniversary.
Because all 4 of them in action.
Wow, that's amazing.
On the 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Wow. So what were the British beaches were sword and gold, right?
Yes. Uncle Jack went in on gold. The day before as a commando. Dad's logbook says where he was bombing and attacking German forces behind the beachheads on specific targets. Uncle Alden was obviously in battleship, British battleship, and Uncle Edwin went in later.
Yeah, because the tanks ashore. Yeah,
with the tank. Yeah, went in later, but he was
fascinating.
He was taken prisoner of war in late '44. But in my father's logbook, when they were repatriating prisoners of war. Flew the Lancasters into France and Germany. Who does he pick up? His own brother.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah. Are any of them still with us, or have they all passed on?
No,
they're all passed on.
Gone now.
Yeah. Well, that's a proud thing.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today